To be our keynote address today. If you've been living in a cave and don't know who AWR Hawkins is, I'm gonna educate you a little bit. He is an award-winning Second Amendment columnist for Breitbart News, the writer and curator of Downrange with AWR Hawkins, a weekly newsletter focused on Second Amendment, also for Breitbart. He is a political analyst, weekly guest for Armed American Radio, and a Turning Point USA ambassador. That's a new one. Congratulations on that. He has a BA in history and an MA in U.S. history. Civil War is kind of his sweet spot. A PhD. This Dr. Hawkins we're going to hear from here. PhD in military history from Texas Tech University. Oral history collection he owns of World War II POW interviews. The AWR Hawkins collection is at the Nimitz Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas. He is not messing around. He knows what he's talking about. I see you with your 5 minutes. I saw you, David Laird, and I know where you live. And I'm sitting next to you. You're in trouble. Paper cuts for you. All right, without further ado, someone I am super amazingly blessed to be able to call my friend, AWR Hawkins.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's working. A normal person would have already had their computer on, but I am not normal. Let's see where I am here. Well, going into this, let me just say, I didn't really know. Good to be here first. Let me say that. And David, where are you? I'm going to reach out to you. I think we're pretty close in proximity as far as where we live and do things. So good to meet you. I enjoyed what you said. And anyway, good to be here. And I was kind of in turmoil about what I was going to say, and Cheryl could testify to that. I think I reached out to her yesterday, the day before, to be sure there wasn't a certain thing she wanted me to speak about. I'm glad I did, because I've listened to you all talk, and you listen to what Rhonda talked about, you listen to what other individuals talked about, what Beth spoke about. Everybody talked about something a little different. If I had come in here and talked about, well, the source of our rights is God, you all would have all said, well, we know that. We're not. So I would have been behind the curve. If I'd come in here and said, well, whatever. So when I reached out to Cheryl, I said, I want to be sure I'm talking about what you want me to talk about. She said, let's talk about trials and tribulations. And so that's what I want to talk about for people who work in the Second Amendment community. And I can't try to guess where each of you are. I imagine some of you have been doing what you're doing for quite a long time. Maybe there's some who are just starting. I know some of you, Eric and I were talking, I know some of you are like Eric. You're part of a huge organization, and you're out there in the forefront. But wherever you are, if you're going to work in this community, you're going to have some trouble. And I just thought the thing to do, I told Eric this is going to be very unorthodox, but I want to talk about me getting to where I was able to write for Breitbart. And I have to tell you up front, I'm not embellishing the story. And the reason I'll say that is some of what I'm fixing to tell you is so crazy that you're going to think I'm making it up. And the truth is, I'm barely going to tell you any of it because of time. I'm not saying that critically. If I had an hour and a half, I would barely tell you any of it. All right? But I want to tell you some of this, and I hope that by telling you some of this, it will help you, because I know that even now, there are days I sit home and my family will be there, but it's like there's a glass bubble around me, and I am so turned in, and I'm just thinking. My daughter will go, you mad? Because I get this face when I'm thinking. And so, are you mad? And I'm like, no, I'm just thinking. And you feel isolated and alone. I felt that way a whole lot when I started doing this. But it will happen still to me from time to time, and that's why I thought maybe going through this might be helpful. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I was not a traditional college student. I didn't start, I don't think, till I was 30. And I did a BA and then in history, and I did an MA in U.S. history. And after I did it, I had a professor who was remarkable. And he said, "You have got to get a PhD. You're wired for it." And so, okay, I'll do that. So I go to get a PhD. And now my experience with a BA and MA was remarkable. Everybody kept warning me about all the liberals I was going to meet. I met some, but they were very weird in that the professors would say something and they would allow you to call them on the carpet and have an exchange of ideas. Now, once I got to where I did my PhD, that ended. When they asked a question, they wanted me to tell them how great they were. They didn't want anybody to defend America, defend the military, or defend the Second Amendment. Problem is, I defended America, the military, and the Second Amendment with a lot of consistency. And so what happens one day is my dissertation chair, when you're doing a PhD, you all probably know, but if anybody doesn't, you have a four-man committee, depending on what school it is, but at Tech it was a four-man committee, and they guide you through writing your dissertation, which is the last 2 years of your 6.5-year program. And so my dissertation chair just comes up to me, kind of gets me in the corner, and he says, "Have you thought about transferring to another school?" And they tell me that if I'll transfer, they'll guarantee they can get me in. And I just kind of laughed at him to ease the moment, but I knew I was in trouble. And I hadn't, just to be clear, I haven't done anything smart aleck to these people, but like in one of my first classes there, they called our military baby killers, and I would force them to define why. Where did this happen that you claim happened? Who said it happened? I'd just do what they would do to me on a paper, kept going to sources until they would have to back off that claim, or they would just have to tell me to be quiet. But that's kind of what my experience was like. Well, one day a professor holds up, he passes out all the papers, I'll never forget it, and at a PhD course, again, many of you probably know, but they're very small, 13 people in a class. So you see everything. I noticed that everybody got a paper back but me. And he holds up my paper, and he goes, "Folks, I want to tell you how not to write a paper." And he picks 2 pages out of my paper and just reads it. He goes, "I want you to hear how not to write." And it was 2 pages where I had defended in one part the Second Amendment, and then more largely the source of rights as being God-given. All right? And he would have no part of it. But anyway, I keep going. Eventually, the department chair met with me and took me in a little room. This is why I say you're going to think I'm making it up, but I'm not. He took me in a little room. There was one light on. It wasn't in my eyes like an interrogation room, but I had that feeling. And he goes, "Look, we need you to get out of the program." So this is the second time. He said, and I said, "Well, what if I don't?" He said, "Well, there'll be no scholarships, no part-time teaching." And anyone who's done graduate work knows that part of getting a PhD or even at the master's level is part-time instructorship. They said none of that, no letters of recommendation, no scholarship. And they told me that if I tried to get published, they would contact whatever magazine I want to get published in and try to keep that from happening. And I look at him, I go, "Well, what happens if I keep showing up here and I do all the coursework and I meet the requirements? Do I get a PhD?" And he goes, "Nobody knows." So I went home and thought about it, and my wife looks at it, she goes, "What are you going to do?" I go, "I'm going to do what needs to be done. I'm going to show up to school tomorrow." So I showed up. Well, I don't know if you clap for me or not. It just happened to be how I'm wired. So I just showed up, and it was miserable. They about broke me. There was one episode that I won't get into again for time, but I was walking across a garden-like area, and I heard somebody whistle. It was a professor who was under a bush, and he wanted me to talk to him, but he didn't want anybody to see that he was standing near me. When I would walk down the hall sometime, people wouldn't even walk with me because of all the back talk they were doing about me. And like a guy now who's one of my greatest friends, who is a federal agent, he told me some of the things professors had told him about me to try to dissuade him from hanging with me. It's incredible. But anyway, so long story short, I'm walking down the hall one day, and I had gotten to where when I would go home or even go to the bar after class, if I'm holding something in my hand with ice in it, I would hear the ice banging against the glass. And I mean, that's just how I live. Well, I felt this arm under my arm, and I turned and I looked, and it's Dr. Reckner. I go, Dr. Reckner, what's up? And he goes, I got you. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, I've got you. I go, it's not going to work. I said, these people hate me. He goes, they fear me more than they hate you. And within 2 days, he had fired my dissertation committee, had realigned everything. He didn't fire them from their positions at school. He just took them off my committee. Had set my committee up with people who were pro him, therefore pro me. So it didn't matter what I was doing. And anyway, that's it. Well, that's not mine. I don't know where that sound is. Anyway, so I graduate and ended up getting my PhD, and I thought, okay, now I'm home free. But now what's happened is I'm marked. So I can't get any teacher's position. Can't get any teaching jobs. I get a couple. I teach in the A&M system, the Oklahoma State system. But the only kind of jobs they let me teach are jobs that you could teach if you had done your master's, and that was it. You could teach survey courses. I couldn't teach anything in my specialty. And you talking about depressed. I'm going, man, I went to school for 10 and a half years, and I can't, and anyway, something Reckner had done that really helped me, though. He told me 2 years before I was done, he goes, Hawk, you need to start writing. When you get out of here, he told me, he goes, it's not going to be over when you get out of here. You got to start writing. And he was basically letting me know it wasn't going to work out the way I thought it was. He was right. And so I started writing, I think in 08 for for historical outlets, and in 07, like Vietnam Magazine, Civil War Times, those kind of things. My PhD's in military history. So that made sense. And then I started dabbling a little bit in political stuff. Now, I know a lot of you have done this, knocking those doors, trying to find somebody that would run something by AWR Hawkins. And every door I knocked on, it seemed like got slammed, or it just never got open. And so anyway, I ended up, though, finding some places I could ad hoc and write here and right there. And kind of like Beth was saying, I'm writing all these places. I'm not getting paid, but I'm writing. And I just kept writing and kept writing. And then one day I get an email from a super popular radio host who is a Fox News contributor to tell me that my writing on Fast and Furious was the best that he had seen. And so, again, just because I'm wired that way, I struck while the iron is hot, and I just respond. I go, look, I've been teaching. I want to jump out a freaking window. And I need a place to hang my hat, some place to write. Can you help me? And he responded in about 15 minutes and just said, I know somebody at Breitbart, don't burn me. And I said, I won't burn you. This individual and I have still to this day never met. But he made a call for me, and I believe it was the next day I wrote my first piece for Breitbart. I believe that was June 2010. Might have been May, but I think it was June. But anyway, but even then, same position Beth talked about. I'm not getting paid. All right? I'm just kind of on there, and I'm not writing on guns. So I'm not everything I told you, and I'm not even doing what I want to do. I'm writing on national security because the PhD was in military history, so I'm writing on national security. And this goes on for about 2 years with them, where I'm still not getting paid, and then I began getting a little nominal money, and then Sandy Hook happened. When Sandy Hook happened, I'm on our back page at Breitbart where we can see each other and we can have dialogue. And I see somebody was thinking about writing a story on a gun, and I could tell by the way they were writing they'd never held this gun. They don't know which side the levers are on. They don't know a lot of things. And so I just insert myself in that, and I go, look, I'll need to rewrite this for you because we're going to look bad if we. And Steve Bannon is our chairman at that time. Now, I don't know if you feel what I'm telling you, because I'm just telling you, I'm not like talking about me going, look at me. I'm not setting myself up as your guide. What I'm saying is, I bet a lot of you have gone through this. I just kept hitting closed door after closed door. And every time I thought, man, there's a light, there was no light. And then out of nowhere, Steve Bannon, he just does a company email. Well, it might not have been full company. It was to the people in this conversation. He goes, from now on, AWR is guns and guns only. And that was it. I think that was been December 15th of 2012. And all of a sudden, boom. Now I'm guns only. And I am in a salary agreement with Breitbart. And then it's been that way, I guess, for now, 10 years. So, but all the way there, all the way there. I say that in jest, and I maybe shouldn't make a joke like that, but I'd come home and my wife would look at me. She's like, "What's wrong?" I go, "I'm just going to jump out a freaking window. I'm just going to go lay behind a car. Can you back up to go to Walmart?" And you kept thinking nothing's working. And I'll tell you, for me, and I know all of you have different examples. I'm not making my example the best. I'm not saying my example is the best one. It's just the only one I know. I went to school 10 and a half straight years. I went every spring, every fall, every summer semester. I did BA and overlapped my MA with the last year of that, and immediately started my PhD when the MA was over. And so I'm going through all that, and I guess you start thinking, or I started thinking all that hard work is going to pay off. But if you think about what I'm going to tell you, some of you feel frustrated, miserable sometime, I can relate. Because think about this. I started going to school in 1998. I didn't get that job with Breitbart until 2012. So I put in a ton of work, and then I just sit around and go, what's the deal? What's the deal? I got these people where I got my PhD. They don't even want me to be a doctor. They don't even want me to be alive. You know what I'm saying? And I just thought when Cheryl said, let's talk trials and tribulations, one of the things I've learned, I'm happy as a cat at Breitbart. But it's important to understand I just didn't get to do what I'm happy as a cat about doing overnight. This was ironic, Cheryl, based on our talk. I was at dinner with a friend last night that I hadn't seen in a while, and he had somebody with him. And they asked me what I do, and I said, write on guns. So my buddy goes, well, he writes on guns, and companies send him guns, and he reviews them and this and that. And he said something in a funny way about how, wow, I wish I had a job where people would send me guns. But the way he said it was like, maybe what I do, I got some easy life, I don't know, whatever. And I looked at him, I go, all you got to do is go to school for 10 and a half years. And then after that, for about 8 or 9, you just got to claw and fight with everyone else who wants to do exactly what you want to do. And then you got to meet those editors who will lie to you right to your face. And they're just doing it to hold you in place so no one else has this opportunity, and that they themselves can go take that opportunity. I go, you've only got to do that for about 20 years, and then you can maybe, But see, that's why I wanted to talk to you all, because if you're in a hard spot, you got to remember a hard spot might last a little while. But you also got to remember what I've learned from my experience, and this is only as good as what I've learned from my experience. You just got to stay the course. There's a Steve Bannon somewhere. There's a Dr. Reckner. What a great man. What a great. I was his last PhD student. He had a disease and no one knew it, and then it developed while I was with him. But what a great man. But I'm just telling you, you got to stay the course. And you got to keep knocking those doors. What I try to do with all the ugliness that these heathens showed me, and that's all they are, is heathens. What I try to do is try to learn, I'm not going to treat other people that way. when I meet other people, can I help them along the way? If I can, I'm going to help them. All right, and those people and I don't have to agree on every single thing, but we do have to agree on some things. And if we don't agree on those things, then I guess they're on their own. But you got to be able to, you got to agree on the Second Amendment, the source of rights. Source of rights is not the Senate or the House or the President. And if we believe that, then whoever you are that believes that, you've already missed everything. Because as soon as we give up that our rights are given by God, we don't really have any rights. We just have privileges. And so you can't do that. So don't do that. But anyway, I know I give you a lot of information on what I said, and I know a lot of it is so centered on me that maybe all of it may not be useful to you, but I want to encourage you when we think about trials and tribulations. And again, I'm not presenting myself as an example for you to follow. I'm just pointing out that these things are going to come to you in one fashion or another, unless you are the most fortunate human alive. And I hope you are. I hope some of you guys who aren't writing but who plan to write, I hope it goes easy for you. I mean that with all my heart. I just doubt it's going to happen. Your trials might differ from mine and your tribulations too, but I think you all might do better than me if you're ready for them. See, I wasn't. As I say, my BA and MA were so easy, I just thought, we'll roll right through here. And then I met those heathens, and they were ready for me. I wasn't ready for them. And then there I was. I was out like Moses in the wilderness for about 15 years, and I couldn't get any traction. So I'm just telling you all that. No matter what area of 2A you're in, I know you're going to have trouble, but for those of you who write especially, you're the ones I can relate to. And just know, I didn't mention in here, but at one of those places where I wrote, where I was doing ad hoc writing, where I was writing on Fast and Furious, I had an editor. If I were to say this person's name, everyone in the room would know this person. I had this editor, and he would constantly tell me what we're going to do and have me write on this topic, gun related, and I would write it and send it in. He would hold it until it was not fresh news. And that way he could control the response to me would never be big enough that I could gain traction. Or I'd send it in and he would forget it was there and he'd go home for the weekend. So in the middle of all this, see, I had that, and right when I would feel like finally getting some traction. So I'm just saying all those things because I bet if I talk to Beth or other folks in here who write, you had similar situations with people. And that's what you got to keep in mind. You can't control other people. You can just control yourself. What I work on is control myself mentally. Don't panic. Don't let myself get worked up. By that I mean don't get mad. I don't let myself hate them for who they are. I'm not even saying it'd be bad if I did, but my goal is to keep myself under control. And what I've learned is when I do that, I usually get to watch them lose control, and I know at that point I'm winning. So whether I'm in a debate or I'm dealing with this kind of garbage, my goal is always to maintain control over myself mentally, emotionally, and that's one of the biggest things I've learned by going through those trials and tribulations. It is a waiting game, and it sucks when you're waiting. Tom Petty said that. Waiting is the hardest part. He was right. But I think if you know that that's coming, you'll do better when it gets here. So that's all. It was good to be with you all. And I know I'm ending early. We had a little, Cheryl and I talked about time, and the time changed some, and I had written a shorter talk, which is what I just did, but I thought that might be beneficial. In case anybody has a question, you'd have time to do a question. Is that okay, or is that not? Okay.
Thank you again so much for being here and for sharing all that. And as long as we've known each other, I did not know that story.
Oh,
and thank you. That feeds my heart a lot. A little bit of tears. I'll hold them. One of the things that's the most frustrating for me is when that weird resistance, when that weird trying to throw stones in your path and trip you up comes from people who should and profess to be at my shoulder, right? We're all on the same mission. We're all trying to do the same work. And yet somehow they're the very ones who are impeding the process.
Right.
Can you speak to that?
Well, I can. Speaking to that, it goes more along with Rhonda's approach when she was saying she's a Second Amendment advocate, but more than just an advocate, you know what I'm saying, for the Second Amendment. But, so when we're talking about these people, we're talking about history professors who you would think would be on my side, but you have to understand, if for any of you who are in college more recently, you know it even better, but I saw it firsthand too. See, they didn't teach me history. They taught me methods of history. The history I know because of personal reading. So here I am, a PhD student. I can't tell you how many dates and battles we didn't discuss, because the key was they wanted to train me to use a Marxist schema to interpret history. So I'm learning methods of history that are Marxist, so that when I look at history, if I go on to teach, I'll be teaching Marxism. That's what I did for 6.5 years. Well, that's not true. That's what I did for 3.5. Then Dr. Reckner came in, and he cleaned house. But so that's why, Cheryl, they're not on my side to begin with. Because as soon as I got in there, and they called our military baby killers, and I engaged in conversation to defend the military, they immediately must have huddled up and went, "He's not one of us." And that's it. And it was full on war. There was a class I can remember. I held my first dissertation chair. This is when he was still my chair. I held my hand up after on the previous class he had made a point and we're about Abraham Lincoln, and I raised my hand to say, why don't we read some of Lincoln's original documents? Is there a chance you're picking and choosing what you're covering here? The next class, I raised my hand to ask a question. He didn't call on me. I held my hand up for an hour. But that was the week that I realized the gauntlet had been dropped. The war was on. I'm going to say one other thing. I'm not going to say a name because you would know this individual. But even when, those of you who are writing, even when you get where you want to be, you got to remember that personalities are all different. Another valuable thing I learned is don't take it personal. I've got a boss. I don't have a boss now, but I had a boss at one time. The phone calls could get so heated, the things this individual say to me, I just hang up on him. And he called me back, and I said, well, nobody talks to me like that. I don't care if I lose my job. I'm not, But I'm just saying, you might be like me. So I thought in my mind, and it's going to be like this, and very straight, smooth path, and all the flowers are going to smell good all year round. And no, I don't even know if there are flowers on that path. So that's all.
I just wanted to kind of reiterate what you said, because like our experiences are different but also very similar. People look at the line of work we do and go, oh my god, that's so glamorous, like you can get whatever gun you want, like you can do this and that, like you have these really cool relationships, but people don't realize how many burned bridges you have to go through to get there, and sometimes you're still facing battles. So I mean, if you're gonna try to go down the writing path or whatnot, just remember, like you're gonna go through some of the things like AWR went through. I mean, I got canned for refusing to link to every channel for gun safety. Like, you know what I mean? So you have to be willing to.
Hello?
Then you made me. This thing dead. Well, she makes me think too. When I started at Breitbart, we didn't have gun coverage. I'm just going to drop this thing. Y'all hear me? All right. We didn't have we didn't have gun coverage, so I worked 16 hours a day, probably 5 days a week, sometimes 18 hours a day. Because not only was I covering the news, but I knew we're going to have to beat back some folks, get us a spot. Once we get that spot, we got to protect that spot. Probably for 2 years, I did 14 to 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. And even right now, I take off on Saturday, but usually 2 Saturdays a month I wake up and either some idiot has opened fire on the subway somewhere or something's happened, and I end up working that Saturday too. So I'm still 7 days a week. All right, and I'm just saying that's what I mean too when I say it's not like even what you imagined is not what you imagined because you didn't know what to imagine. So you just got to dig in and be ready.
At AWR, I'm Rob Young, part of Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership.
Oh, right on.
Hi.
Tell John I said hi.
Yeah, well, you can say hi right there.
Hey, John.
Okay. Yeah, your story reminds me, and I just chatted with John. We went through medical school. You can call us 12 or more years of education, including college, to get where we are. Our advantage is we know we're going to have a job at the end. But some of the hurdles along the way are exactly the same. If you get on the wrong side of a teaching position as you're going through, it's not quite as bad as what you did because we know they're still going to get us through. There's not the ultimate threat of saying no, right. but it's remindful. It's very remindful.
Right.
And as physicians advocating for 2A and for our God-given rights, amongst physicians who think that's horrible, we have to keep doing what's right in spite of our own social peers condemning us sometimes. And you got to have spine, and you got to know where you're coming from, right. So you can know where you're going. So we experienced that, and I didn't want to. I heard 3 words that you gave us that I think are actually your conclusion to what to do through our trials and tribulations. And they were stay the course.
That's it.
And I thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm thinking while he was speaking, I'm just going to say, when I said you keep going, you'll find your Steve Bannon, that sounds so corny. It's even when I re-say it sounds cornier than the first time I said it. It sounds like, I don't know. But what I'm saying, I mean what I'm saying is you stay on that course, you will eventually get past all those jackasses, and you will find an editor who sees what you're doing. I remember Bannon, he's out of the blue. Bannon is. I don't know who's this Bannon guy. But Bannon wanted a PhD on that Breitbart letterhead. You see, I wasn't even thinking about that. I've never thought about that. I did that for a whole different direction in life. I thought I'd be a professor, but they kicked me out of that before I got there. And all of a sudden, everything I've forgotten about, that's what's important to him. So I'm sitting here working as hard as I can. He sees that. I'm just saying, when it all works, it will all work. But it may, my dad used to always go, boy, it's all uphill till it's downhill. And I mean, I felt like I was uphill a long time. And that's all I'm saying. But you got to hang in. You got to know once you crest that point, it is downhill. And you don't know who's going to help you crest that point.
Well, AWR, I want to say thank you, because there's so many of us that are in the trenches, and what we share on social media is the happy, positive, whatever, and we don't show when our boots are muddy and we're crying, or we just hit a wall, or whatever that is. And so as people come in behind us, they don't see that part. They think that it's all just sunshine and roses, and you just free guns, and that you just got lucky. And so I want to be lucky like you're lucky. And so by you telling the story, it resonates with me amazingly. I mean, one of the things that I try to tell people is that the harder I work, the luckier I get. And you just keep digging. But the fact that you're sitting here telling this story has so much meaning to me. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Test. So I totally sympathize with your story. I too have gone through something similar. I'm sure a lot of folks here have. But you're telling your story, and it reminds me of so many people who I know in this industry. And I know their story. I've watched them struggle through it. It's one of the things that's kind of held me back from wanting to do a lot of things, because I see them going through it. Like, I'm not interested in being Dave Laird popular on social media. I want to market my brand, my product, that sort of stuff. But one thing that's definitely held me back is watching other people I know in the industry who were famous influencers, and the stuff that happens to them that they have to go through. It's just like, it isn't worth it. And then on top of that, being accused of driving Ferraris, living in mansions, and all this sort of stuff. One of my best friends, like, that's sort of what I pictured too the first time I saw his stuff. I went to his house. I mean, the car was ragged. Like, I don't know how he drove around. The house was ragged. So, like, when he finally bought his first car, it was still used. He bought his first house. It was still used. But, like, he was moving up in the world. And I was like, you get some. I was so proud of him. And people were still accusing him of, you get all this free ammo. No.
Take us home.
Well, and I'm going to say, I don't want to be confused. I'm not saying I get free guns. I'm saying they send them to me. I usually get a 3 to 6 month agreement to try them and shoot them and try to break them. I've only had one that I was able to really break, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. I sent it back to them to keep from hurting their brand name by writing on it, and leave it. I'm wrong. I'm trying to be nice, and but anyway. Yeah, the thing is, Dave's talking. I just want to say, last thing I'll say, you don't think about all that stuff that I just talked to you all about, or I don't, because the goal is to defend the Second Amendment. So as Dave says, the goal's not about, well, see if I can make myself popular, or see if I don't care about it. My goal is defend the Second Amendment. I had a gun rights group, and not Eric's group. I'm just saying that for clarity. But I had a group a few years ago that wanted me to agree to write in a supportive manner on a particular gun control. They said, if we'll do this, then blank, this will happen. And I said, no. And they kept calling me, and I had the executive directors call me from the group and all this. And I finally just told them, I go, guys, can I get you all on the phone at the same time? They're on the phone. I go, you want to know what's important to me? And they go, yeah. I go, not you. I said, what's important to me is when I go to Walmart, that guy in front of me turns around and goes, you're the guy that defends my gun rights. That's what's important to me. And that's what makes all that. That's why I don't think about all that other stuff. I only thought about it just to tell y'all because I want to warn you. But I don't sit around and think about it. I sit around every day and think, how can I kick a liberal's teeth out and protect my gun rights today? That's what I think.
Verbally.
Every day.
Verbally speaking. AWR, what an amazing treat. Thank you so much. I know everybody in here wants a selfie with AWR and Cheryl, so we're going to stand in front and we're going to take a great big room selfie.
Let me say, if you want to connect so you can message and we can talk, my Instagram is AWR_Hawkins. At AWR_Hawkins. And Instagram, because they're lovely people, Even after you type it all the way in, only then will it pop up.
It's so true. It's hard to find you, but it's worth it. All right, I'm going to hand you the mic.